Good morning. Hey, I am Steve Weber, and I am the host of the American Gumption Morning Show. Welcome to today's show. So, American Gumption showcases ordinary individuals who are living extraordinary lives. And the reason why we like to highlight the ordinary and extraordinary is because we believe that the world needs more positivity and encouragement. And that's what we are here. We're encouragers and like to interview those people who are positive. So anyway, the goal of the show is to help anyone who wants to awaken, and then to help those awakened folks live their life with gumption. We are all about living our lives with gumption. All righty. So today is, let's see, what is today? It's Monday, July 12th. Show number 201. And my monologue today is kind of a retrospective on the first 200 shows. I just made some notes on, some of the observations I've made about reaching a milestone. So Friday was the 200th show. And so today we're going to amuse ourselves, and we're going to just talk about some of the things that I've learned and maybe how it's evolved, because it's evolved a lot. It's been a great almost a year coming up in about 3 weeks. All righty. So let me tell you what's going to happen the next couple of shows, because I have two more guests scheduled for this week, planning to do shows every day. And then I have at least two guests scheduled for next week. So we're humming along here as far as filling up our calendar and keeping a regular schedule going. So anyway, tomorrow, Reverend Wanda Richert will be with us, Wanda Richert. And she was a Broadway actress for many, many years, and now she's a truth warrior. So we're going to talk about the journey that she's made from being on Broadway to being someone who's a patriot and a warrior defending those who need extra help. Alrighty. And then on Thursday, Scott Stanfield comes back, the modern longevitarian, the guy who, we have a tight connection. Anyway, Scott's going to tell us about he's back full time managing a restaurant, a 5-star restaurant, and he's had to put his modern longevitarian show on hiatus, but he'll be back. So he's going to come join us on Thursday and tell us how to deal with post-COVID anxiety, And then next week, Robin Alchin-Rise will join us. She is a doctor, PhD, and her company is Evolution Performance Psychology. So she'll be here either Monday or Tuesday. Don't know that for sure. And then next Thursday, Aaron Avila and Deborah Sweezy, both from Stroke TV. They are doing a interview where they interview people who are stroke survivors. They are niched on that particular topic, people who have had a stroke and survived, and they've got their own community, and they're going to join us and tell us about that. That'll be next Thursday, a week from Thursday. Alrighty. So here we go. Let's see, I got a couple of Natalie Coleman's in here joining us, and I'm going to be a guest on Natalie's show later on this afternoon, or at 3:00 our time, 8:00 her time. So yeah, we will see you later, my dear Natalie. Thanks for joining us. All righty. So now I think that's it. I got the announcements done, and I mentioned that the monologue is the first 200 shows. This is all we're going to do. We don't have a guest today, so I'm going to do this little monologue. I'm going to expect it's going to be about 20 minutes, but let's just say we'll be done. We'll be out of here by half past the hour. So we got 25 minutes to plow through this, and maybe even quicker than that. All right. So 200 shows. It's kind of a nice milestone. I just started on August 3rd, and I did 5 shows that week, and I did 5 the next week, and I did 20 shows in the month of August last year, and I did 20 shows in October through December. So the first 5 months, I did my first 100 shows, and now we're into the 7th month, and I'm getting to 200. So slowed down the pace a little bit. Decided that if I do 16 and a half shows a month, and that's 100 shows every 6 months. That's 200 shows a year. That's a little easier in terms of like a pace, and doing 5 a week was pretty tough. Keeping it filled up with the schedule with the guest, and so anyway, it's all good. Just natural evolution. It's like, hey, what are you comfortable doing on a regular basis in terms of how much I can manage? So anyway, I slowed down my pace a bit at the beginning of the year. Now, when I got started, I needed throw a huge gratitude to Miss Gratitude herself, Debbie G, Spirituality Gone Wild. She invited me to be part of that community. I was thinking about starting a show, but I was thinking I would just do it on my own. And Debbie invited me to come in and to, so, her and the other members of Spirituality Gone Wild welcomed me and allowed me to kind of get a start in a way that, was just comfortable and easy to be part of that group. And I learned how to use StreamYard, the broadcast tool that I still use to this day. And it was, Debbie and her team at Spirituality Gone Wild were using it. And so it was an easy thing. And I already knew about StreamYard, but just being able to be comfortable with that group of people, with the tools that they were using, it allowed me to get started where I didn't have to worry so much about that kind of stuff. I just felt like I was part of something. So I want to just first and foremost say, Debbie, thank you so much for the fact that you welcomed me in and allowed me to get started in a way that was easy. All righty. So right from the get-go, I decided that I was going to take it serious. I was going to try to make this a professional broadcast. And retrospectively, there's probably a few things I did that were a little bit, maybe a little too formal, but that's okay. But things like production value, the theme songs, the opening song, the closing song, first time guests, those are all things I pretty much had right at the get-go and decided, hey, they had to be part of what I was going to do. And I had this vision for regular guests, not so much like regular guests coming back for a long form interview, but rather regular guests who might pop in and do little tiny segments on a regular basis. The only one who really worked out that way has been Brandon Schaefer. So huge shout out to Brandon, simplebusinesshelp.com. Brandon shows up almost every Tuesday. I don't know the number of times he's been on the show let's see, it's been 52 weeks, comes on Tuesday. I'll bet he's been on 40 times. So that I'd have to count to know the exact number, but he hasn't been here every week, but just about, certainly 3 out of 4 weeks. So Brandon, thank you so much for being part of it. Other Spirituality Gone Wild show hosts, this was kind of my vision. It never quite worked out the way I thought, but I thought they might come on a regular basis to the morning show and promote whatever show they were. I was kind of one of the only ones doing a regular basis. Debbie G was doing a regular show, although, over the several years that she's had Spirituality Gone Wild, it kind of ebbed and flowed in terms of whether she was doing it, 5 days a week or 4 days a week or once or twice a week. So but anyway, I started, I'm going to do this on a regular basis. And hey, I thought it would be great if the other people doing regular broadcasts came on and, did a regular segment. Didn't really work out that way, but that idea still could happen, and I think still will happen as this show goes along. But certainly Joan of Angels and Serenity Sam, who are both part of the Spirituality Gone Wild, we attempted to do regular segments with both of them. Now, one thing that kind of surprised me was that there became regular guests, Nikki Roscoe, Natalie Coleman, and they came back on, pretty much like every 3 weeks, 4 weeks for, the first 4, 5, 6 months of the show. And so both of Natalie and Nikki ended up appearing, have been probably on the show 7, 8 times, maybe, in the year that I've been doing this. So, huge thank you to that. Now, what that taught me is that you can have a guest come back and you can expand on topics. You can go deeper on it. You can focus on one particular thing and have that conversation about it. In the case of Nikki, she had all these different modalities that she used to work with her clients, Reiki, crystals, others, like I'm drawing a blank now with the all of them are, but we went through each one of those topics on a deep dive on the interviews. And then she just published her book and we had it. So we went back into the crystal thing the last time she was on. Angie LaRue, became one of my, favorites. And then I ended up meeting Angie out there, and she'll be back again. I met Angie out in Boulder on my drive across America. And Stacy Redfield, our fitness misfit. She had kind of she talked about her Pilates studio. not too far from where I'm staying in Pennsylvania. And then she became a like kind of a regular mini guest after a couple of interviews in which we talked about the whole Pilates movement. And then she had, like, we were doing a regular segment once a month with her. And then I ended up going up and doing a live remote with her, like about a month or two ago. So it's kind of been like, there's been certain people who, just sort of grew and evolved with me. Heather Holmes, same thing. Interviewed Heather twice back at the early times in October timeframe a year ago, or last October, and then have done a couple live remotes with her. So grateful that we're opening up, and this idea of doing remotes with people. I'll talk about that in just a minute. All right. So and another thing that I had to do right at the beginning was booking guests, creating a database, your Rolodex. But I set up an electronic database and started a system so that I could track people, monitor, who I reached out to. And I would say this, I'm not as good at like opening up my database day in and day out and following the procedure and working my list. But rather what I do is I just keep adding to people, and I kind of just reach out to them, and I've let them kind of come to me. And so I haven't tried to force things. I try to force things in the sense that I reach out to people and initiate the conversation. But if they don't really, if it doesn't work out and, they get lost in the shuffle, and then, circle back to them later on and see if they're ready to go and do something then. So that's how that whole thing has happened. Other systems, though, writing the bios and the intros, that right from the beginning, I decided that, that would be something that I would do. A lot of other show hosts will say, hey, send me your bio, and then they'll just read the bio. I've always sort of decided that I would just, research who they are and create their own bio. They all have a website, and everybody has an about page, and everybody has a LinkedIn profile. And you look at those things and you read it, and you just sort of form an opinion of who they are based on that. And then I write my own bio almost 95% of the time. And then that's what I use to introduce the people. And then that also helps me create the what we're going to talk about that day. So their bio, if they just send me their own written bio, it might touch on things that I'm not necessarily planning to talk about or interested in talking about. So that, that writing their bio and then creating the interview guidelines, in other words, some questions, some bullet points of things I want to ask or talk about, that became, that's a pretty important piece of this. All right. So the monologues are the next thing I want to talk about. I started with a monologue right from the get-go. I don't know what inspired that to happen, but I just thought, hey, I'll just talk for the first 15 minutes, and then the guest will come on and we'll have 45 minutes. It just seemed like, I just decided that's what I wanted to do from the beginning. Well, the first 2 months, all my monologues were, I'm going to call them the safe things. I talked about gumption. I talked about personal responsibility. I talked about the 3 life lessons from the movie Forrest Gump. And I went through all those things, and it was all stuff that I knew cold, from, like the back of my hand. It was comfortable for me to talk about. Somewhere along the line, and I don't know, I'd have to go back and figure out what show I went, oh my gosh, I'm going to do a monologue today based on the particular subject that a person was going to, who the guest was and what they were going to talk about, because, always we have an idea of what we're going to talk about. So I decided that day, just pretty much, I don't know when it was, but I should look it up. Anyway, that day I said, hey, I'm just going to write my monologue. And it was something new. It wasn't one of those like things that I had been talking about for the last 10 years, gumption, personal responsibility, 3 life lessons from the movie. It was something else that I knew something about, but I hadn't necessarily been part of my regular conversation that I had as a professional speaker. So I wrote that monologue that day, and almost instantly, that became the new routine. So every day I would like to look at who is the guest, what are they going to talk about, and then, how can I, expand my topics that I talk about, and essentially my monologues became some kind of a, one little piece of what they're going to talk about, and I would just share a story about my own experience or my own beliefs on a particular topic. And so that's how the monologues have evolved. Now, the beauty of that and the fun thing for me is that every day it kind of forces me to, put my creative thinking cap on and actually what happens is I almost feel like they're inspired. So I got a little morning routine that I go through. And, when I really sit down at my computer, about 2 hours before the show or 2.5 hours before the show, I end up just pounding out what the monologue is going to be. And I don't even necessarily know what it's going to be until that morning. And then I just do it. And I've got 10 minutes to talk at the most. So it's not like I have to write. And I usually kind of just script it out in terms of, some kind of a lot, like a bullet point, like list of like what I'm going to talk about. And then I just wing it like that. One of the things that's happened over the last couple of months, I would say 2 to 3, maybe 4 months, is I've started using Google Slides, like a presentation software, and sharing my screen and actually creating presentations to go along with my monologues. Now that's great because it ends up, being more visual and it helps explain a topic. I've had a couple of interviews where I've had people who are artists, or Serenity Sam last week with her paintings. And so I can have those, I can show the different art or painting or pictures that they have, and then let them kind of follow along and explain things. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. So it's basically storytelling. It's a better way of storytelling. It's not just the words that I'm using like I'm using today, but rather I'm adding in a slide. If you know Amazing Polly from Canada, several years ago I discovered her on YouTube. She since has taken her program to other channels because she's no longer, her content was deemed inappropriate for YouTube. And so anyway, but she did all visuals, and I thought, this woman is amazing. She's a citizen journalist telling, giving stories, connecting dots for things that are happening in the world that we don't see on the mainstream media. So she is a citizen journalist and someone I enjoyed watching for a long time. So not that I say I'm going to go into the depth that somebody like that goes into, but if I could bring more storytelling and visuals into it, that could certainly happen. So one other thing about the monologue is that I noticed that it's like been a way to develop ideas and thoughts. So a lot of times I end up doing a monologue, and then that weekend I end up doing my weekly Gump Date. If you go to AmericanGumption.com and you sign up for my weekly Gump Date, it's a long form storytelling written version, and then it has all the shows that I did last week, and I did have the shows that are on the upcoming week. And so I encourage you to go ahead, AmericanGumption.com, and just right there on the homepage, sign up to receive the weekly Gump Dates. But anyway, I do the monologue during the week, and then I look at, I take the inspiration a lot of times for the Gump Date from one of the monologues I did, and then that becomes the written version of what I had verbally shared with the with you guys during the week, during the show, previous show. Well, sometimes I end up evolving the content from that monologue to the point that I end up doing another monologue on that kind of same topic, but a more full or enriched version. So the combination of speaking it, writing it, and then re-speaking it allows me to develop my beliefs and thinking and clarify, what it is that I want to, say. So that's been kind of a fun thing to do. All right. And then the last thing I'm going to say about about the show in the early days is that just going live at 10 a.m. on a regular basis has really been a good thing for me, because it forces like a discipline of like, okay, you wake up and you get the monologue done and you finalize what you're going to talk. You already have reviewed who the guest is. You have them set up and you know what you want to say, but you kind of go through it again and you fine tune it and you get ready, and then boom, you go live and you just do it and it's done. So that's been pretty cool. Yeah. So Natalie also chimes in and says that Brandon is brilliant. Yeah, but Brandon comes on Thursdays or Tuesdays, and he just gives like a 1 minute kind of pick me up. And that's how I met Brandon, because he was doing those kind of segments on LinkedIn on a regular basis. And, it's just been kind of a fun thing for him to join me. And so grateful for that. All right. So now let's fast forward into the beginning of this year. And I end up learning that there's an opportunity there's a need for a vehicle on the West Coast to get transported to the East Coast. And their family members are talking about putting the vehicle on one of these carrier trucks and sending it across the country. And I'm like, hey, can I fly to California and drive it back? And so that's what happened. And I ended up driving it back. So I left here on mid-March, and I got back here in early April, about the 10th of April. And so it was like about 3.5 weeks where I was out on the road driving across the country. That was pretty much a game changer. And Natalie says that she says that who needs Red Bull, and Brandon gives you his energy. Yeah, Brandon's a high energy dude, and he had a birthday yesterday too, Natalie. So there you go. All righty. So anyway, the drive. So I thought the drive was like I said, it's going to be a fun thing, and it's going to be a chance for me to test broadcasting from the road. And I took essentially the equipment that I had here using for this show, and I thought, well, maybe I can make that work out there. And for the most part, I was able to make it work. I ended up doing 10 shows from the road. It was definitely a challenge in the sense that the tech didn't work as good as I would have hoped it would have worked. So I learned that. I went, okay, I need a different set of, I need some additional tools, and I need some different ways of thinking about how to do the show than when I was just doing it from the comfort of, a studio like, where I'm at now, where it's everything set up and you just turn it on and you go. So having that equipment be portable and then I have a list of stuff that I will need as I get going. And I also have a design for a studio inside of the RV that I end up living with and traveling with as I get out there, because that will be the easiest way to have this type of a studio with me. And then I can also take that same equipment that's in the studio, and use it portable as I go out and about, meet people different places. So that's, that was like one of the really beautiful things about doing that drive across the country was I learned all that stuff. The other thing I learned is that there's an on-air camaraderie when you do a live show with somebody sitting there physically with them. Now, up until then, COVID had us locked down, and it wasn't necessarily appropriate for me to be, going out and doing, shows where I wasn't, using my studio, and they, was using basically, digital technology to connect us and put us in the same location, or put us on the same screen at the same time having a talk. So anyway, there was like I said, an on-air chemistry and a camaraderie that I really liked and I could feel. When I worked with Victoria Reynolds, several shows we did together, I felt it. When I went out to Palm Springs and Dr. Sharon Stroud, I felt it. Just being next to the person, it made it easier to communicate, because it was easier to go back and forth when we're using this technology. You don't want to step on the other person and jump in too much, and yet at the same time, it's a little bit harder to feel the energy of when you can jump in and just say something real quick, and when you need to, and so anyway, it works. Either one's perfectly fine. But it's just it's way better in person. Zoom good, Zoom good, in person better. There you go. Zoom good, in person better. All right. So and then the other thing I should say about the American people, just the kindness and the goodness of people, being with them, this whole lockdown thing has been, not good for our human psyche, because we've isolated ourselves. So that's all I'll say about that. As I got back, I realized that it was a great opportunity to do a reset in terms of American Gumption and this show. First of all, because the original intention was that I was going to be out there traveling around the country, interviewing people. And then, of course, the show began virtually, and that was all appropriate. But the country was starting to open back up again, and so I just thought, oh my gosh, I have a great opportunity to do a reset as a result of that trip. So when I got back, I had no momentum going from before, because it was a 3.5 week lapse between when I was doing the show, and so I needed to kind of refill the pipeline in terms of guests and so anyway, I made some decisions that I was going to definitely look at everything and sort of start to reevaluate things. And so over the next couple of weeks, I ended up I defined certain things that I kind of had figured out in my own mind, but I hadn't necessarily put down on paper. And I ended up doing monologues on all these. So the purpose, vision, mission of what American Gumption was all about. The American Gumption topics, a super huge, important idea in terms of, what conversations am I going to have on a regular basis with people? What are the categories? It's a variety show, but I wanted that defined. So I ended up going ahead and doing that. Just a Gumption overview. And then the whole idea of the bench skits and speaking Gump, which had been, my brand for 10 years, and the opportunity to go out and communicate with organizations that need help with some type of with some message that they're assembling a group of people and they want that group of people to get their message. So the idea of speaking Gump combined with the bench skits and the Forrest Gump character, that all came back to life as a result of, coming back and re-looking at things, and the fact that the country was opening up and people were starting to meet again in person. Most recently, in the last, I'm going to say 4 weeks or so, the whole idea of patriotism and freedom and truth has come back strong. That was something that was on my initial idea, but it wasn't anything that I ended up doing for those first, 9 months or so. And so the last couple of weeks, I've tuned back into that community that I had been very much a part of for many years. And then sort of in this, like when I left Montana and ended up back here, I kind of lost touch with those folks, but re-engaged with that. And so see myself going more in that way. So and I started rethinking the broadcast, from a professional point of view, because I just made a plan at the beginning and I just sort of stuck with it for the most part. But the format in terms of shortening the intro and the outro songs, haven't done it yet, but they're a minute long. They could be 30 seconds. The idea of repeating guests, I didn't have like that just evolved. I never planned for that, but people like Nikki, Roscoe and Natalie, who joined me all those times, I now see I'm looking for guests that I can bring in, do an intro show of who they are, and then deep dive 7-8 weeks, or maybe not that long, but at least 3 or 4 different shows afterwards where we kind of go deep. I like that format. So that's sort of something that's happening. And then the monologues, I think we can improve those to be a little more, more graphics and better storytelling and tightening. And I can take some of the same monologues that I did months ago and just kind of upgrade them and add those extra elements to it with, some graphics and stuff. So that I can see happening. All right. One last page. We're at 10:29, so I'll give some another 5 minutes and we'll be out of here. The future. The future. Yeah. So imagine that everything that we know is going to change sometime in the not too distant future. And when I say, I'm talking about a pretty significant global reset. So let's just pretend that that's going to happen. So institutions and systems that we've had, what if they kind of all collapse and they no longer exist in the form that they, have existed in for years and years and years? And I'm talking about places like government, education, banking, Hollywood, religions, healthcare, the media and the news and big tech. What if like something were to happen where all of those institutions suddenly realize that, oh my gosh, we can't do business the way we've been doing business the last multiple years, and what if like the American people and the world people had more freedom as a result of those institutions no longer being the exact form that they have been, and new systems emerge, the reveal of all of that information and collapsing like shocks the heck out of people. And so it's possible. I don't know. People are talking about it. So anyway, do some research and see if that's something that resonates with you. So imagine though, so as I sit here today, I go, that's, that feels like something that could happen. And I want to be ready to take advantage of the new way that things will be. I don't want to get caught off guard if that does happen. And so anyway, I just see that, this program and this show could be a means to help people who, are going through that shock, and the people who are awakening, awaken. And then help them live their lives with gumption going forward. And my job here is as a communicator. I feel like I'm a broadcaster more than anything else. I'll need to add new skills. I need to upgrade my skills in terms of just the communicating, the technology that I'm using, the transition stuff. All that stuff will get taken care of. I'll need to build a team. I'm going to need a producer. I'm going to need people to help as I go out on the road to make this all possible. And I've talked about some of those people before. I need to expand my network. And, I've had a nice network of people, but I could just see it just, growing, and it's just happening. And it's a result of having done these shows, and, you just keep meeting new people. And so anyway, that's been a fun thing. And I need to be a guest on other people's shows more often. So that will happen. That will happen too. And finally, I'm just going to say that I need to align myself with a few brands and sponsors and or business partners so that, I really end up monetizing this program. I've had the luxury of not having to necessarily, focus on that part so much, but that obviously is going to, in order to have build a team and have a bigger network and make it all possible, that all has to fall into place too. So that is falling into place, and there are things happening that will allow that to happen. So that's really all I wanted to share today is, having done these 200 shows, I've personally grown. I've met a lot of new people. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of new things. I love meeting people. I love having conversations. I think people are great. I think people are both ordinary and extraordinary. And, I feel like my job is to spotlight those people and then allow them to shine and then allow, people who are attracted to them, attract to them. And, I'm just a networker and a guy who talks and shares stories. And of course I want to do it from the road, and I want to be, meeting the American people. It's called American Gumption for a reason. The idea is to travel. I often say that it should be global gumption because we're all connected throughout the world. And maybe we'll have a second show called Global Gumption after American Gumption runs its course. But we're not going to worry about that. We're going to just worry about doing the next 100 shows. And we're going to imagine that like lots of things are changing and that new opportunities await all of us. And, the world, as crazy as it seems sometimes, is a pretty exciting place to be. And we're living in an exciting time and place. So that is it. All righty. Yeah. So thank you, Natalie. I'm going to see you later. We'll see you at 3 p.m. Eastern time, or 8 p.m. in the UK where you broadcast from. So, all right, that's it, everybody. Hopefully that made all sense. That's the monologue of the first 200 shows. And let's see, I'll tell you what I'm going to tomorrow is Reverend Wanda Richard, and she's going to tell us her story from being a Broadway actress for several decades to a truth warrior that she is today. And then Scott Stanfield, the modern longevitarian, he returns. He's been on a guest on the show several times. He's going to come back, and we're going to talk about how to deal with post-COVID anxiety. All right. And a couple guests next week. I'll tell you about them as the week goes on. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow.